Good evening. I hereby call to order this regular meeting for the Ridgefield Board of Education. Would everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome. Before we begin with the board agenda this evening, we have an RPS student showcase, I believe starting with musical robots, if I have that correct.
I guess that's our cue. Yeah, the robotics department is here, but we are not robots, we're merely musicians.
I was close.
Well, thank you so much for having us here today. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I was just telling Susie and Corey that this is a hot commodity to play a gig here at the board event, so we're happy to be here today. This is a quintet representing our large 20-piece RHS jazz band, and we're going to be playing a tune by the Meters called Sissy Strut, which is a funk tune, and this is in preparation for our fundraiser concert on Sunday. So enjoy. We have Noah Rose, Shane Miller, Hayden Webb, Zach Barnett, and Rowan Conley. All right, take it away. One, two, three, and.
And next week, we'll bring our instruments and do the same thing, right? Guys, thanks so much. That was fantastic.
So good.
You have one already?
A little choral in between.
No, I have a 50 Defender.
It's good human. I'll
Now we welcome the Ridgefield Robotics Club.
Testing, testing.
Hi, I'm Heather Wallace. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Ridgefield Robotics Club.
I'm Jared Brown. I'm another of the co-presidents.
And that's Aiden.
I'm Aiden. I'm one of the co-vice presidents of the Ridgefield Robotics Club.
And we're here to talk to you about a little bit of what we do and what we're going to do with this very generous donation that we've received recently. So first,
Alright, so you might be asking, who is the Ridgefield Robotics Club? So we are a student-led high school robotics club open to anyone, regardless of background or experience. So all of the students are making decisions on how to proceed with the robots that we build based on the VEX robotics competition. So we receive a set of guidelines to compete in a challenge, and each team can create their own unique approach. So our values are collaborative professionalism. So because of the structures of the tournaments, we are working with various teams from other schools, so it's important to be able to work with anyone. We are all about inclusivity, so people of all genders, backgrounds, and personal expressions should feel comfortable in our club. We are technology positive. We love everything about technology. We're always for improving. We like to evolve our designs. After every competition, we make numerous changes to our robots in order to perform as well as possible. And we love community outreach. We put posters up. We promote interest in the STEAM works, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, to anyone of any age. And now you can hear from Heather.
Sure. Good evening, I'm Mr. Murphy. I'm a physics teacher as well as a product design teacher and, of course, a robotics teacher at Ridgefield High School. Senior teacher of technology education at Ridgefield High School. I'm very excited to have my students present tonight in advance of a vote on accepting a generous donation from the estate of Mr. Richard Cummings. I do want to take a moment before we go any further to talk a brief bit about Mr. Cummings. Mr. Cummings passed away in 2015 when he was in his early 90s. He'd been a long-term resident of nearby Pound Ridge, New York, and he recalled the challenges his family faced during the Great Depression. And though quite successful, he lived a very modest lifestyle. He cared deeply about the community, and towards the end of his life, he was excited to be able to be in a position to leave a substantial amount to charitable organizations in this area. So I wanted to take a brief moment to honor Mr. Cummings. Those of you who've met me before know that I could probably stand up here for 45 minutes or more talking about all the virtues of the club and the robotics program at Ridgefield High School in general. And thankfully for you, I brought some students with me who are going to do a better job than I would rambling. But one of the things that I just want to mention about why I'm so honored to be a part of this program is it really is a program that hits on the vision of the graduate that we have here and the 6 core values of Ridgefield High School. So as you listen to them, you're going to hear them talking about collaboration, communication, innovation, knowledge, mindfulness, resilience. It's all in there. And In addition to just the competition itself, our club, I think, provides a valuable third space for students across the grades. We have students who are, just freshmen who just walked in and are trying to figure things out, to seniors who are all working together, passing on knowledge to one another. And one of the things that I love about the robotics tournaments is the structure of them sort of forces students to not only learn technology skills, the coding, the mechanical design, and so forth, but it also forces them to learn these business skills, these interpersonal skills. So every match is 2 robots versus 2 other robots, and in the beginning, you're paired with someone randomly, so it gets students to go out and talk to other teams from other schools, learn from each other, and then by the time the finals roll around, the top-ranked teams get to pick their partners for the finals. So if you've done a good job, you better have also scouted out everybody else to decide who's going to be a good partner for you for the finals. And if you didn't happen to make it in the top ranks, you better have marketed yourself well so that other teams know that maybe you didn't do so great in the rankings, but you could be a valuable partner in the competition. So because of that structure, these students don't go in there with a, we're going to knock everybody out kind of attitude. They go in there with an attitude of, we're going to let everyone know how great we are. We're going to hear from everyone else about what we can learn from them, and we're going to try to find partnerships that are going to help us be as successful as we can. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather to talk a little bit about how our club has evolved over the past 6 years and where we're headed.
So I've been lucky enough to be a part of this club ever since I was a freshman. I joined after going to the club fair that very day, I think. And I absolutely fell in love with machines and getting to build something from nothing and make it into something amazing that can compete in a game like the VEX Robotics tournament. So I think I joined maybe 1 or 2 years after the first year, which we like to call our pre-rookie year. Doesn't really count, but it's okay. We got us started, it got us here. We had about 2 teams at that point, and then when I was a freshman, we added a team, which I joined, 877J. We're one club, but a bunch of different teams, depending on how many people are in it at the time. And now, I think, as of last year, we have 5 teams, which is incredible growth, and I have been so lucky to witness it, and it's been pretty amazing to see how far we've come. Last year, we were able to make it to the Southern New England Regionals. So that was in Framingham, Massachusetts, and it was basically a 2 or 3 day event where we competed against other teams from throughout the region, just like we had been doing for the past couple months or so. The tournaments that we compete in during the fall and winter are called qualifiers, and that's basically all to get you to the regionals and then hopefully, fingers crossed, worlds. So, and I think this year has been the first year, if any year, that we've had a real chance of going to Worlds down in Dallas, and I cannot wait to see how that goes for us, hopefully. So throughout competing in tournaments, our club won 2 awards. I think we have 4 awards total, but last year we won the Think Award and the Sportsmanship Award. VEX offers a plethora of different awards to showcase different aspects of the region, like the Excellence Award is one for overall excellence, especially your engineering notebook, which is a very important part of the process. And the Judges Award, which is kind of like a miscellaneous one. But the Think Award was awarded to us because of outstanding programming, and that was to our 877K team, which Abe is a part of. And I will hand it over to him now to give you a demonstration of what one of our most beloved robots, Nessie, can do.
Up real quick. A little bit of a minute. Nessie is the robot that took us to regionals last year as Team 877K, which is made up of 6 members. I do a lot of the driving on the team, which is why I'm here today with the controller. But our team has members who code and build. I help along with the building process, and I've been learning coding, so I can help along with that process. But for the sake of driving, I did a lot of the driving last year with this robot, Nessie. Last year's tournament was about picking and moving mobile goals, which are these 2 odd objects right here. What? Oh, yeah. So with Nessie, she's got 4 wheels like a car. She So you can drive around, move around a big field that the tournament takes place on, as well as pick up these large mobile goals and carry them around. Last year's tournament was called Tipping Point, as you would need to put it on a large seesaw-like platform, so being accurate and consistent with your ability to place large goals is important, like if I messed up like that. However, with practice and improving your mechanic design, you'd be able to pick up goals of various sizes. Being able to pick up multiple goals and travel around is an important part of the game. And with a robot like Nessie, we defined our design so we could compete at the regional tournament. Essential to our design was the fact that we needed to be compact and have a design that functioned for us all the time. And so over many iterations and many attempts, we came to this robot. But that was through months of hard work and trial and error. The process to build a robot takes teamwork and collaboration and innovation, and is truly something unique that I've honestly never experienced before. I joined the club last year in November, and when I joined, we had a robot, but it was nothing like this at all. It had an arm, it had a front arm, it had a claw, but through the process of building a robot like this, I learned a lot about robotics and innovation and engineering, but also teamwork and collaborating with others and understanding others' goals and views and positions. And it's really helped me grow as a person. To continue on with Heather, we'll talk about some further points of our robotics book.
So I just wanted to take a moment to thank our various supporters. Obviously, the RHS SLO has been amazing with funding each of our competitions and tournaments that we go to. The RHS administration and custodians and maintenance have helped out with our tournament for last year, which is our first year, and then this year again. The RHS faculty members and community volunteers who have served as judges at our tournament, and of course our supporters, and all the family members who cheer us on and give us time to dedicate. I'm sure my mom and dad have been very key in getting me to those 6 a.m. tournaments.
And yeah, I agree with Heather there. My parents have been very supportive in getting me to those early tournaments. A big point, or a big factor of us participating in these tournaments and competing is building these robots, and these robots look, super complicated. They've got a bunch of parts. And with our new, and as we approach the new season, a key point is that there's a new game which requires new components and requires new mechanics and new design that's completely different than what we've built this year. We've got to launch discs into a goal. It's nothing like picking up these weird objects at all.
Yeah, so with a new game obviously comes new parts. Some of the ones that I've kept my eye on are what we call flex wheels. So basically they're compressible, like I call it squishy wheels that can grip the discs a little bit better than the parts that we have now. Pneumatics have become an extremely valuable part of the robot these past 2 years. They weren't allowed before, I don't think, but that's something that Vex has brought in. So all robots have a 8 motor limit. So that's the Vex smart motors. You can kind of see little black cubicle things. But in addition to that, you can have 2 pneumatic systems, and that basically just allows you to have 2 more functioning mechanisms, which can be make or break for a lot of the teams. I remember pretty much every team at the regionals and worlds has pneumatics on it. So
on our robot, we've got that little motor there that operates that crazy little claw we've got. But on a pneumatic claw, we'd have this crazy gripper that would slam down the pneumatic pressure and just clamp onto the goal.
yeah. So another important part of our club is community outreach. So in the past, we've interacted with the Maker Fair in Westport. We've done BES Take Apart Night as a former BES alum myself. That was a lot of fun. We have our competition, which is open to the public finally, so we can have spectators, and I hope to see you all there, hopefully. And then in the future, we hope to do more things like this, and I think one of our other members is working on a library program that I'm sure she's going to set in motion soon.
thank you so much for hearing about our club and what we've been up to and what we're hoping to continue on with our generous donation. And we're happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing what you've been up to. We look forward to, we'll be discussing the gift very shortly this evening. So congratulations on all you've already accomplished.
Awesome work.
And next up for this evening, we have public comment. Has anybody signed up to speak this evening?
No one has signed up yet. Would anyone like to make public comment at this time? There'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Instead of a chairman report tonight, I'm going to pass the mic on to Vice Chair Malhotra.
Hi, everyone. This is incredibly hard for me. We lost our friend, a fellow RHS family member, Nia Simpson, a few days ago. So I would like to invite everyone and the board to please take a moment to honor her memory. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. De Silva?
Thank you, Tina. I don't know that there's more to add. I just want to take a moment to commend our students this evening, all from the high school where Nia attended. Your spirit, the way in which you all engage adults in the way that you do cannot be understated. I know that when we come into schools every day, you make it easy for us, this work. And so in honor of Nia and honor of all of you, thank you for being a part of everyone's life here at the Ridgefield Public Schools. The student presentations this evening really show the spirit of this Board of Education, that we are student-focused and we will continue to be in honor of every student that comes to the Ridgefield Public Schools beginning in preschool and leaves us onto their adult journey. This is why we exist, for you, for all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Committee chairs, I know we had budget committee meet this morning.
Yep, we did have a budget committee meeting. We'll be reviewing some of that data later on. I think it was the quickest meeting in the history of committee meetings, about 8 minutes, I think we did it in. A lot of that due to Jill's new format, which has been fantastic.
Great.
I'll keep singing the praises on that. But that was very smooth.
Good, thank you. Any other liaison reports for this evening?
Sorry. Just very quickly, the Energy Task Force met. I couldn't be there, I was not well, but they talked about the new fire police building. Most of the members of the task force believe that the building should be net zero building. They talked about the EV charging stations. They talked about the school bus prep for EV chargers, and they talked about block power funding for replacing old boilers with heat pumps.
Thank you. Sean?
Prevention Council, really important tomorrow. They are doing a Narcan training event at the Emergency Operations Center, right by Yanity Gym. It's not too late to sign up. It's tomorrow at 7 o'clock. It should take about an hour and a half. And we'd love to see you there. You can sign up on the Ridgefield Prevention Council website or Facebook page has information.
Thank you. Okay, we can move right on to our student representative for this evening.
Lizzie, do you remember?
Oh,
It is with a heavy heart that I give tonight's update. With the recent passing of Nia Simpson, a volleyball, hockey, and lacrosse player, and an integral member of student government, our school is in mourning. Nia embodied student government's mission to be kind, and she will be missed by many. It means so much to us to see the love and support from the Ridgefield community to the Simpson family. Thank you. At RHS, everyone has been getting into the groove of going to school again after the summer. The hallways are busy with talk of projects, sports, and friends. Kindness and positivity are ever present at the high school. Everyone has also been getting used to flex time, which has allowed students extra time in the morning to meet with teachers for extra help, hold additional club meetings, or just connect with one another before starting the day. This past month, we held another Fun Friday, with September's theme being Adam Sandler Day. It was great to see the enthusiasm and participation, and is foreshadowing what is to come during Spirit Week. Speaking of, student government has been working hard on preparing Spirit Week theme ideas, the pep rally, and the homecoming dance. There is also the club fair being held tomorrow, where students will have the opportunity to hear about and sign up for various organizations. I'm looking forward to finding some new recruits for the Unity Club at RHS, and maybe looking into joining the Knitting Nook or Ping Pong Club. Some of the other 40 clubs kids can join include the Future Business Leaders of America and the Youth Against Cancer Society. New this year, we are offering the Career Club and the Strategic Games Club. At the first home football game, students got to see the Tigers lair in full force on Tiger Hollow, and it was a fun time for all. All teams have been busy on the court and fields, with games and practices going on daily. There's always something to do for athletes and fans alike. Huge shout out to our girls swim and dive team, who are impressive 8-0. In a tri-meet last week, our team defeated the two most decorated swimming programs in the state, Greenwich and Cheshire, in one evening. The game schedules can be found on the RHS Athletics website. Thank you for your time and support.
Thank you.
Thank you. NEA representative? That's okay.
hello, everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Liz Carlin. I'm the VP of Operations for the NEAR, and I'm happy to be here to give the report. It's October, and it's hard to believe that Halloween is right around the corner. Teachers are preparing for the fall and all the fun activities that come along with it. Open houses were great across the district. Schools are fundraising and planning school Halloween events. Homecoming is coming up at the high school. We can't wait for our football game against Wilton. And parent-teacher conferences are right down the road. It's like a breath of fresh air to be back in school and have it feeling normal. Personally, I'm extremely excited to watch my kids running around in circles until they drop this Friday at the Branchville Boogie. Or I'm sorry, the Branchville Beaver Boogie, I can't get it wrong. As it returns to its original pre-pandemic format in the afternoon with food trucks. I'm very excited. Since the last NEAR report, our teaching community has dealt with two major losses. The first being the longtime RPS teacher and Ridgefield resident, Jennifer Mason, who worked in the district for 34 years, most recently at Farmingville Elementary. And the second, Nia Simpson, a junior at RHS, who has been in our district since elementary school, and who I had the pleasure of having in my economics class when she was in 9th grade. It's a shock, and it feels very unfair. Both of them were taken from us far too soon. It's hard. As teachers, we feel these losses deeply, not only for ourselves, but we see the loss and feel it with our students. Our hearts go out to both the Simpson and Mason family. As I hugged a crying friend in the social studies workroom on Friday, I realized that in times of grief or great stress, I am most grateful for the community of teachers that I work with. These are the people who I want with me in the hard times, and the adults I would want comforting my own children in times of great sadness. Oh, I can trust Ridgefield teachers to be kind and caring, flexible and responsive. But I also know that we are strong. We have been through a difficult 2 years and are on the other side, trying to triage and heal the wounds from the pandemic. Our school communities are oriented towards unity, respect, and kindness, attitudes which are fostered and modeled by our teaching staff. The teachers here are top-notch, and I have enormous faith in their ability to meet the social, emotional, and academic needs of Ridgefield students. Most of us in the past few years. So as you hear requests and feedback from our staff this year, I hope that you will recognize that these expressions come from a place of integrity and expertise. Our educators in Ridgefield are working their magic in classrooms across the district every day, despite the hard times. However, it would not be possible without the backing from our community, our wonderful community. We are extremely grateful for the continued support from the Board of Ed and our administration to help us secure the resources that we need for our classrooms and larger school communities. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Liz.
PTA representative?
Good evening, everybody. First of all, Lynn and I want to share our condolences as well with the Simpson family and the Mason. It's Mason, correct? The Mason family. Everyone has already said so articulately what kind of impact that sort of tragedy has. I lost a cousin at 18 very suddenly, and I know you never come back from it. So yes, our hearts are with everyone as well after those terrible losses. And I think we also want to echo the sentiment that we're very grateful and feel very privileged and honored to represent the PTAs in this community, because it is such a special community, and we really do feel such a spirit of partnership from Dr. De Silva, Dr. Hanaway, Ms. Gillette, and the board as well, and all of our PS. So thank you for that. Now, onto a happy report about all the wonderful things your PTAs are doing in Ridgefield. So at Farmingville, Farmingville was excited to welcome all parents and students back with an amazing back-to-school picnic, complete with their new raccoon mascot that made its debut. They were very excited about that. They had a successful open house, which was well attended. Teachers were treated to a waffle truck prior to the event. They also have their fun run this Friday, the Raccoon Rally fundraiser in full swing. They have raised the most money FES has ever raised during a non-gala event, and they're really proud of their community and grateful for that support. They also executed another successful book fair and raised $1,400 for teachers and staff to spend on books for their classrooms. At Branchville hosted and provided refreshments at a new parent, the PTA hosted and provided refreshments at New Parent Coffee, where Mr. Margolis and Mr. DeCesar welcomed parents new to Branchville and answered questions. The open house was well attended. PTA also organized refreshments for that and discounts at local restaurants for the teachers to eat before the event. The fifth grade enjoyed a slumber party themed movie night at Branchville to kick off their final year of elementary school. That was a huge hit from what I hear. So as just referenced, the Beaver Boogie is on Friday. Very excited to go back to the pre-COVID format. I myself am hosting a sing-along when the kids are not running. So if you really want to get excited, come dance with us. We're going to be doing the cha-cha slide in the cafeteria / pray for me. And finally, as you may have seen in the Friday message last week, Branchville students are really excited about the new pendulum swing that the PTA purchased. There's a big line at recess every day to get on it. Oh, and shout out to Jay McLaughlin on Main Street, who are partnering with Branchville for a fundraiser with regards to the playground as well. So that's super generous of them. On the middle school front, Scotts Ridge hosted the Welcome Back Tea with their principal and vice principal last week in the library. It was very well attended. They are hosting the 6th and 7th grade socials on October 14th, and 3/4 of each grade has already purchased tickets, so excitement around those events. They're offering a Halloween theme and expecting a very fun event. And the first monthly principal's coffee will be October 21st. At East Ridge, they had their back to school bash with 256 students participating. Huge success, yay for the dunk tank. I had an excellent view of the dunk tank from the bounce house that I was manning. It was great. I got to see everyone go in. Their Pride Drive fundraiser is 82% complete, so they're really excited about all of that energy behind membership in their PTA. And coming up in November, they have the Ben's Bells Kindness Project, kindness pencils for all students, a Veterans Day breakfast, and a thankful for our teachers cookie platter before Thanksgiving break. So that's our report for tonight. Thank you so much for having me, as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes, starting with the 22nd of August. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the meeting of August 22nd, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Selena? Any comments or adjustments or amendments? Being none, all those in favor? Unanimous at 7. Thank you. Next up, the meeting minutes for September 12th. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the special meeting on September 12th, 2022.
Second? Sean? Adjustments or amendments? Being none, all those in favor? Unanimous again, thank you. And moving on to the other September 12th meeting.
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting on September 12th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Tina? Any amendments?
Oh, I was just
Nope.
all in favor.
Being none, all those in favor? Unanimous again, thank you very much. And moving on to the first action item of the night, an approval of a gift to the RHS. Do I have a motion?
Sure. I move that the Board of Education accept with gratitude and appreciation a gift of $20,000 from the estate of Mr. Richard Cummings to the Ridgefield High School Robotics Club.
For a second. Amy? Anybody want to make a statement?
Well, I think Mr. Murphy said it well, and in the spirit of his 3 students did also. Just something that that stood out when you were speaking today is your goal in continuous improvement and always getting better and going into your competitions. Yes, of course, it's a competition, but also learning and partnering with others. And I'm sure that that's the spirit of in part of this donation, and it stood out to us this evening. And I've been waiting an entire year to wear this T-shirt, and I knew exactly where it was, and I was so excited when you came in, and I got to wear it, and hopefully you all do as well as expected, and if not, we know that you're going to go in there trying your very, very best. And just one other piece, I'm sure everybody else felt it because I felt it. Not only with our musical performance this evening, but with all of you. You just exude kindness, and we kept hearing that theme with Nia and with the other reports this evening, but just even taking a photo with you and your big smiles and your thumbs up, you exude that, and I'm so proud, and I know my colleagues are as well.
All those in favor of accepting this gift, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
I
Congratulations.
have to take the T-shirt off because it's really hot.
It's so hot.
But it's not because of anything you said or did. Thank you. And you can go home and do your homework now.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have a first review of the 2023-24 school calendar.
So I will take this one. So just a couple of points that I'd like to share this evening. So this is the 23-24 school calendar. As of now, the last day of school for students would be June 11th, just like we did with the most recent change on the calendar the last time we came together. June 12th is the last day for faculty, but that moves based upon the snow days. We did remove the early dismissal professional learning day in December just because of the nature of how many days our students were out of school. You may remember that we did make a change to the calendar this past year, 1 year prior to that, where in February we continue to have the break. However, the 16th is an early dismissal for students, but still a day, half a day for students. So we want them in school on the 16th, but they will be dismissed early for that PD day. Just to bring you back to a little bit of a history, is that the school district, up until about 2.5 years ago, did have 3 days off rather than the 5. But we had noticed that issues with attendance on the part of students, because oftentimes families would want to take that longer break, was impacting the consistency of curriculum. So we shifted to the 5-day model here. It's worked well this past year. Obviously, those extra 2 days certainly adds days at the end of the year, and no one can deny that, right? Because it's just simple math. But that's still in the calendar for the tentative draft of 23-24. We have, with Juneteenth, we have elected to continue in this draft to have school. First of all, just in terms of the timing of it, it complicates matters. But we believe that students should be in school, and we can provide an educational program or embedded within the curriculum program, which you'll hear more about over the course of the year. So outside of that, those are just the few highlights that I wanted to share with this first draft of the calendar.
Any questions? This will come back to us again.
Yes, one more time.
Okay, thank you. And next up, the approval of the teacher professional growth and evaluation plan. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve Ridgefield's Teachers Professional Growth and Evaluation Plan presented on October 11th, 2022.
Do I have a second? Sean? Any comments, any discussion? All those in favor of approving? Unanimous 7. Thank you. And now we can move on to the SDA mandated reading programs.
Good evening. I'd like to invite Linda Johnson up to join us in this conversation, elementary director. To move this forward, sorry. So Dr. De Silva and I, along with Ms. Johnson, wanted to give you an update on what's going on with the recent reading legislation and the State Department's response to it. And interestingly enough, Linda, Ms. Johnson, and I today saw that there were some new updates. So we want to share with you what we know right now, just so everybody's aware. But we are aware that it seems, due to pushback from large groups of districts, that things are changing and changing really since Friday or Thursday when we wrote this memo. Yes, we're not on this presentation yet. Confusing because there's
Sean
many.
beat me.
Thank you. So just a little bit of background. So in June of 2021, the Connecticut legislature passed the Right to Read legislation. And a part of that Right to Read legislation systematized a statewide reading response that really was informed from research around the science of reading. And what the legislation did was they required the state of Connecticut to oversee all state and local efforts related to literacy, including setting reading curriculum requirements for districts, providing professional development, hiring external literacy coaches, and coordinating with teacher preparation programs. And they also, as part of the legislation, the state of Connecticut was asked to establish the Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success. So we knew that this legislation was coming along, and I want to be really clear that in Ridgefield Public Schools, what we've been working on in terms of our curriculum implementation in early literacy is connected to the science of reading. So we are not in any way in opposition to making sure that the science of reading is part of our core curriculum. And if you remember, we implemented phonemic awareness last year across our elementary schools, and this year it's foundations in grades pre-K 2. So we expected that we would hear from the state some suggestions for curriculum resources. So we've talked over the years about the difference between a curriculum and a curriculum resource. A curriculum really is standards and a roadmap. It's created by teachers. The curriculum resource is really what teachers lean on day to day to provide instruction. So the interesting thing that you see in the memo is what we found out at the end of September was that the state was requiring that districts purchase a curriculum resource, one of 6 curriculum resources. And while we thought we'd be able to waiver in the new resources that we've just implemented in Ridgefield, those resources were no longer on the waiver. And there was also some confusion when reading all the legislation and reading the interpretation of the legislation from the State Board of Education, if they were really talking about a curriculum resource or if they were talking about curriculum. So there was a lot of pushback because really what districts were feeling is that the state was telling us that we were all going to have to purchase for our kindergarten to 3rd grade students a brand new curriculum resource. And this is a curriculum resource that is your entire comprehensive literacy program in one box. What we've done here is we have a curriculum that was created by our teachers with the standards presented to the Board of Education, and then we lean on different resources to support the different parts of the pie, really. What the state has said at this point is that here is a box, basically, and this is what you need to teach from. So if, as a district, we followed that, we would have to throw away all the work that we've done, all the expertise of our teachers, and really, in our opinion, provide a one-size-fits-all type of approach to reading that might have the elements of the science of reading, though we've had no opportunity to look and really study and learn about those resources. I think Ms. Johnson had a 1-hour webinar today on one of those 6 possible resources. I hope I'm not talking too much in circles. But that's a little bit of the way that it's coming off, is a little bit of how it feels to us. So I wanted to open the discussion with just really an update on where things are and how that fits with the work that we're already doing in Ridgefield Public Schools. So we find ourselves in a little bit of a crossroad, a crossroad, because we know that the work that we're doing with our teachers, we know we're providing really high quality professional learning for our teachers. We know that these are best practices, and we know that the resources that we have implemented recently are known in the field to be the best at providing that part of the science of reading that we provide in Richfield Public Schools.
So, Linda, do you want to add to that, or can I jump in?
I'll just add by saying, in addition to the professional learning that we've been providing to our teachers recently, our teachers are already very well versed in teaching literacy. As recent as this morning, I was in kindergarten classrooms and once again astounded by the talents of our teachers, whether it's teaching letter name, letter sound, the phonemic awareness program, Hegarty, that we implemented last year from preschool all the way through 1st grade. It's pretty incredible to see our teachers at work. As you all know, they work hard, they are talented, and our students are responding to the structured literacy that they are providing to our students. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to work hard. We'll continue to see what's working well on behalf of our students and where we might need to improve.
Okay, so just a couple of points. So thankfully, we had a lot of discussions around policy today, but Eagle Eye, Rachel Ruggieri, shared that the policy that we included in your packet is our current policy. However, it is one that through the audit, they have identified as one that doesn't reflect all of the legal references. So soon at Policy Committee, we'll actually be updating this policy. So the policy that CABE is recommending does include language that the Board of Education has the responsibility and authority for the district's curriculum subject to any limits specified by the state. So as Corey mentioned really thoughtfully, you didn't go in circles, but I will, really thoughtfully, is that the State Department of Ed, we all knew it was coming, that there was some conversation around, in my opinion, a dictated program to all school districts in the state of Connecticut. How many there were, what that waiver looked like was all up in the air, but it appeared that there would be a waiver and that school districts would then be able to apply for the waiver. The issue that seemed to be a rub, at least at the State Department, was around the units of study that we do implement here, as does many, if not most or all of the school districts within the region and or the district reference group that we're associated with. That seemed to be the biggest rub, and primarily because that is not a comprehensive program that includes all of the elements that are in the science of reading. There's nothing new in the science of reading that I didn't know, having worked through many different literacy programs over the course of my career, specifically in early literacy, and actually working at one point through a State Department grant as a literacy facilitator that worked on these 5 components. So there was nothing new there. We just believed that, like every other school district, you'd have a waiver, and so long as you could provide evidence of those, that our programs supported the elements of literacy, it would be fine. And then, like Corey said, it appeared as if foundations very specifically, Haggerty very specifically, would not be allowable within the waiver. So why that is, that's a good question. A small cohort of individuals, when I say small, a small cohort of individuals were the decision makers within the State Department of Ed, and they believed that a one-size-fits-all approach for every educator within the state of Connecticut and with every school district was the right approach. And so when asked for feedback, and we were asked for rapid feedback, and I can tell you it was rapid feedback that I sent along. I was incredibly discouraged by that decision and had some, which I think are very viable questions. So what happened? Who's going to pay? Because our school district, our board, just supported pretty significantly costly programs that are research-based.
$250,000 with professional learning in the last 2.5 years. Okay. Probably about 250.
Okay.
So all the foundations, materials, and training, pre-K2, the Haggerty training.
And I want to remind folks that Foundations is built off of the Wilson program, which is OG-based, which is part of the work that we do within SRBI and special ed. So I asked who's reimbursing us, who's paying for the new program, what happens when the new program, if the new program fails. So let's say our performance actually goes down. Why are they worried about our reading performance? Sorry, Jeff and Linda, but maybe you should take a look at our math performance and suggest a program for one size fits all for that, because they're pointing out an area that they are deeming as one that everybody needs to have this one box approach for. So I asked viable questions. So what happens if we implement this program and students require more intervention? Who's going to pay for that? What happens if we see our special education numbers increase, students who receive services because this one-size-fits-all program is not the right program? Who went through this process of studying these programs and identifying that this was the best for every school district? Has every school district's teachers been trained in the same way that we've been training our teachers over the past blank number of years? You fill in the blank. And there were a number of other questions. I think as a result of many school districts like ours, I'm meeting with superintendents, I think later this week or early next in Durg A. They've changed that and shifted. So now you can apply for a waiver with those programs that we currently have. It is 21 or 22 pages long, and the amount of data that they're asking for around subgroups, et cetera, is absurd. But we'll do whatever we are required to do so that we can move forward in our school district with what's best for our students, for our faculty, and for the approach that is the most meaningful. I asked a question around rigor. Where's the rigor of these programs? So is it assumed that every student is below a reading level and that there aren't students that require more? So I didn't get answers to those questions, but at minimum we did see a shift in the waiver. So that's promising. I encourage everyone who can speak to a legislator to be sure that they're communicating the amount of time and thoughtfulness that some school districts, or maybe all of the school districts, have engaged in, and how decision-making like this is just not reasonable. That said, they're arguing that it only needs to be implemented in the 23-24 school year. I think the cost is about $7 million if they were to fund it, across the state. The data that they are basing their decision-making on is out of Mississippi, I believe.
Missouri?
No, I think
Usually Mississippi?
I think it was Mississippi, but we'll check.
Yeah.
Missouri or Mississippi, but I think it's
Yeah.
Mississippi. But now you're making me think.
Okay,
Maybe it's
it might
Missouri.
be.
But we'll look. But that's where the data that they're basing it off of. So there was an underachieving school district that achieved better as a result of this requirement. So at this point, we will fulfill the waiver obligation. I'm hopeful that they'll recognize that the amount of work and time they're taking away from the administration to complete this. And by the way, I can tell you, there's no one at the State Department to email. There's 70 vacancies there. Ms. Gillette emailed an individual at the State Department last week. The email came back undeliverable. So I'd really like to know who's the team that's going to be looking through all of this data that we're going to be submitting. And there's nothing more frustrating than doing all the work and having no one look at it.
And I just want to add in the last bits. And again, this is not anything to do with the science of reading. This just has to do with losing full autonomy after all the work that we know that our teachers and our teacher leaders and our administrators have done. If you watch this team in the last 2 years and saw the collaborative action teams and the way that we study resources with our teachers, and if you look at the policy, even though we need to update it on how curriculum is developed, that needs to be developed with teachers from the bottom up. So that is something that we really, really, we know that when that happens, implementation goes well. And we've talked to you nonstop about implementation is where the rubber hits the road. It's not necessarily always the program, it's the way that you implement it. And having teachers being able to have a voice from the beginning of the process is, it's invaluable. And that is something that we feel like contributes so much to the culture and climate in this district, because we value that process and value that role of our teachers. So even more, that makes all of this feel even more disconcerting. And I can see, I mean, it feels a little bit emotional to us just because we care so much, and our teachers have worked so hard, always, but really, really hard with these new resources that they've been implementing, and we don't want them to worry that we're going to throw out all the work that they've done recently because there was some legislation passed with some resources that no one's been able to learn about at that point. That's not best practice. It's not best practice in our field. So we wanted to make sure that we updated you on this process. We know it's changing. I'm sure we'll send
Mississippi. I found a friend.
It was? Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. But wanted to give you the updates, and we're happy to answer any questions if we haven't already.
The real test is, can you spell Mississippi? Remember, this is the
That one I
science of
can.
reading. You remember that.
Selena, then Sean? Selena, go ahead.
So it's one company, though, who stands to gain, basically?
Six companies.
Six companies make up the science of reading.
Six companies that have created a program that includes all of the elements within one. It's a basal, so you might remember, traditionally basal, so you might remember what those are like for those of us that went to
It's
school in a basal.
scripted. It comes in one box. Everything you need is in one box. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Your mic is off.
And so, but I wondered, I didn't know the backstory of the actual company, and
We don't really know.
And it was
Actually, we
based
don't know
on
them.
one school, you say, or one
Well,
school
the
district? Just one
school district that they studied that they're touting as having performed better is, or state, excuse me, is Mississippi. And those 6 programs, they're even very specific about the addition of those programs. So, you have to purchase the 2021 edition of blank. So, it's very interesting because while we knew it was coming, I think many of us believe that it was geared towards certain school districts, or perhaps where the performance or the consistency or the staff development wasn't there. So to have it impact all of us, and there's very, very few school districts that are ready to jump on. I think 12 have purchased one of these programs in the state of Connecticut in the past couple of years.
So did the state get a break or something by doing it this way, do you know?
I don't think that that's the case. Maybe I don't think that that's the case, but I think that there's a problem that they're looking to solve, and I think that they're looking to solve it with one solution, and they're taking that one solution and generalizing it to every community. And as Corey has said, and as all of you have experienced, our model is authentic, meaningful. It's supported by teachers. It comes with a significant amount of staff development. And that's, even if we were to purchase any one of these programs, then you're relying on the fact that teachers don't need the capacity and understanding of the anatomy of teaching reading. You're just giving them a program and having them read page by page. That's not the solution. And I would say that's not the solution for any school district, quite frankly, not just ours, but I'll speak for ours.
And our scores are good right now.
Our scores are good. Is there always an opportunity to grow? But we look at that data very carefully. You'll hear more about that tonight. And we don't look just at one piece of data. We look at lots of, we triangulate it, lots of formative and qualitative and quantitative data. But again, I think their decision wasn't around school district scores. It was more about, here's the science of reading, and you're all going to teach it this way. Pick your 6.
All right, so I want to, a lot of thoughts spinning. I want to start out by recognizing the work that you guys did up front on this, the research, the rollout. It's been exemplary. This was well reasoned. We were all with you along every step of the way, and all agreed that it was the way forward. I've heard some troubling stuff from some of the legislators recently that are back to, we want to regionalize the schools. We think it's best for everybody if we can share resources. They've already taken that first step in writing curricula for you, which is, I said that was awful when it happened, and people questioned me about it then, but that's awful. It was a bad first step, and I hate to use a slippery slope analogy because it's kind of pedestrian and kind of boring, but that's kind of where we're at. So they start with writing a course. Now they're going to underpin, the entire reading curriculum. Yeah, is math next? Probably. That same legislator that said they wanted to go back to regionalizing also said they wanted to roll out one curriculum for everybody. And I think that would be a least common denominator solution that doesn't fit in a lot of towns. Not just Ridgefield, a lot of towns. There's 169 towns, and they each have a different way of doing things, and some of that's for a good reason. Different population, different parent involvement, everything else. But this really can't stand. I go back to how much do we get for all the mandates they give us? And I don't think the return equals what they're asking of us.
I asked about the penalty if we ignored them.
Yeah, and yeah, you may have a waiver this year. What about 2 years from now?
They didn't answer no.
Yeah,
70 vacancies.
yeah, but if we do a waiver now, does that waiver stand forever? Or does it stand until they can phase you out? And that's the operative question.
Yep.
I think it's the latter, because they want one size fits all, like you said. So I think we need to go back to totaling up what all these mandates really do cost us and question whether it's worth it to do any of them.
So, I hear a lot of emotion from both of you, and we all understand why. But it's not just about what was spent and the amount of time that's going to be required to do this and that and the other. It's that what you're seeing is not, in your opinion, better than what you've already put together.
Correct.
It's not going to be better for us.
Right.
Correct. And our teachers.
So I hope that you continue to support, we continue to support you in pushing back on what you believe to be the right action to go forward. Let us know how we can help you with that.
Yeah.
But I would also be very interested in hearing what the penalty would be for just disregarding
Jonathan,
this.
quick redirect, is there any way that we as a board can craft a letter to the?
Possibly.
Yes, we would do that, and we
certainly
would
could.
sign our names
I
on
think
that.
we
I
should.
would recommend giving it a couple of days, because I feel like they're gonna capitulate.
Maybe, but yeah.
But they shouldn't have to fill out that many pages and spend their time working on something when we already have a program that works. That is not okay. That is a problem.
One of the things that I have learned over time is that there is power in numbers when it comes to topics like this with the State Department of Ed. And so when we meet with our district reference group, so it's actually not even regionally that we're meeting with the school districts that are, quite frankly, the highest performing in the state of Connecticut. We're meeting, like I said, I think it's at the end of this week or early next. I'm sure that we'll craft a letter together and send that out to the state or some position statement if we all agree, because you're right, it's a lot of time and energy. And the worst part of anything, you remember when you used to write a paper for your college class, if someone didn't read it, it was incredibly discouraging, right? You wanted that feedback, even if it was in the red pen.
Well, I think it would help to
I
have
will
the boards
bring
of
a-
each district sign on to a letter as well. And I think most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think there are some of us here who would be willing to sign that letter.
If the board would like, I will bring a draft to our next board meeting potentially for us to sign on to.
I agree. I'm with you, because I think, to your point, we totally respect the work you've done. We know how much work you put in, and I think the board completely agrees that we want to stand behind you. And I go back to what Jonathan said and Dr. De Silva. There is power in numbers, The more we can have our voices raised. And we speak for all our kids, and this is the way we speak.
And we speak for the teachers, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have
We've
fantastic
seen
teachers.
this, we've been part of this conversation.
And this one feels like it was written maybe by lobbyists for literacy programs that are making money on this. I don't know.
I was thinking, but what do we do as a board? And the board we can do is stand behind our district and our teachers.
Do you have a question?
Say something. So first of all, I want to say thank you, because it's because of you guys sitting in front of us that our children are experiencing growth in the classroom, and it's because of all your hard work. It's because of our teachers. It's because of our parents, and I really want to say thank you. As someone who previously taught, the box one size fits all, it never works. It doesn't matter what district you're in. It never works. As a teacher, you have a tool belt. On that tool belt, you have multiple resources that you use to reach multiple types of learners. This feels like somebody in the State Department is not a teacher and is putting this together. That's what it feels like. Because nobody in their right mind with good teaching, best practices, knows about differentiation, how to reach all kids, would say one size fits all in a box. Even if you're a failing school district, that's not a good idea, because you have multiple levels of skills with children. So definitely against going down that road. I'm sorry that there is a 21-page waiver. I do agree with the rest of the board members here. Anything that we can do to help support you guys, write a letter, please let us know, because that's what I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
And we have time. This is not until next year.
We do have
Okay.
some time.
Now,
Yeah.
I was kidding. This is very next school year. That's my sense of humor, and I apologize for it.
Yes, you gotta get used.
I got your joke.
Anything else on this? I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Thank you. Moving on to standardized assessment scores.
Sure. Okay, good evening again. Before we begin with our presentation tonight, I want to give the team a chance to introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. It's Linda Johnson, Director of Elementary Education.
Dr. Annie Tucci, 612 Humanities Supervisor.
And Jeff Corbishley, 612 Math and Science Supervisor.
So tonight we'll provide you with a review and analysis of the data from the state assessments taken by our students in the spring of '22. So tonight we'll walk you through a quick review of the different state assessments, our results in comparison to our own performance in the past 5 years, and our results in comparison to our district reference group. We will end with the steps we have taken prior to the release of these data points and the steps we are taking in response to this specific data. Before we begin, we want to point out that while we are presenting an overview of this data tonight, the real work happens behind the scenes as we analyze this data in conjunction with other data points that we already have in order to be able to draw conclusions about the results and plan effective next steps. What we continue to see is that the impact of learning loss across the content areas and the cohorts is not always what we anticipated. Especially in these cases, further digging is needed to really get to the root cause. It is also important to note that tonight we're going to talk to you about assessment data that was taken in the spring of 22. So the spring of 22 and the 21-22 school year was still not a real normal year. We had quarantine learning, we had lots of disruptions, we had high absences from staff and students due to quarantine, and we had restrictive learning environments. So I'm just going to quickly take you through, this is disconcerting doing both, the different state assessments that we're going to be talking about tonight. So first of all of these state assessments, they are now all digital and they're all taken on computers by our students. The Smarter Balance Assessment is adaptive, thank you Wes, and measures grade level standards in English and mathematics. Students in grades 3 through 8 take one English language arts assessment and they take two mathematics assessments. The second mathematics assessment is based around a real world problem and is in a performance task format. This format requires students to determine which concepts are needed to solve the problem. So that's what the Smarter Balance Assessment is like. The next assessment is the Next Generation Science Assessment, and that's given in grades 5, 8, and 11. So this assessment measures student understanding of the NGSS standards that are taught kindergarten through 11th grade. So the 5th grade assessment doesn't just measure science standards in 5th grade, it measures all the instruction they've had up to that point. The same in 8th and the same in the 11th. So the NGSS assessment shows us individual student performance against those standards and also measures the district's implementation of these standards into the science courses across the years. The final assessment is the SAT school day. That is the same assessment that students take in high school as a college entrance exam. The state of Connecticut uses the SAT in the junior year as a way to measure the implementation of the Connecticut standards by the district and to measure individual student understanding of those standards. The nice thing about it is that students can actually use those SAT scores from 11th grade to submit to their colleges. So these are the required assessments from the state of Connecticut. So here goes. We're moving into the Ridgefield results. So before we get right into them, we just want to remind you about the different achievement levels. It's a scale from 1 to 4. Level 1 means does not meet the standard, 2 is approaching, 3 meets, and 4 exceeds. It's a mastery-based assessment, and each year, the level for students to achieve and meet standards is higher and higher because that achievement lays on top of the foundation from the prior year before. So we're going to begin with our elementary results, and Linda Johnson is going to start with 3rd grade mathematics.
Thanks, Corey. So once again, good evening, everyone. I am going to start with elementary mathematics in grades 3, 4, and 5. And what you can expect to see this evening is comparison across 5-year span. I'm just going to give you a general overview of what you can expect to see, and then I'll speak to each grade level, okay? So in 3rd grade, you're going to see that in comparison to the previous year, the percentage of students who reached grade level expectation or exceeded it decreased. And then in 4th and 5th grade, you can expect to see an increase in the percentage of students who reached levels 3 and 4 in the spring of 2022 compared to the previous year. So this slide here is our 3rd grade math. Again, 5-year comparison. And as I noted, you do see a decrease from 84% in 2021 to 81% in 2022. And what we did was we provided a chart to the right so that you could see the breakdown between the different levels. So you'll notice in level 3, there were 35% students, and then level 4, there was an increase to 46%. Next slide. And here we have 4th grade, and that is where you can see an increase from 71% to 83%. And when we look across the chart at the various levels, we do see a shift in the different levels. And I ask that you notice the level 4 change from a 42% to a 50%. So that is showing growth in terms of how students are progressing from meeting that expectation and exceeding the expectation. And then here is 5th grade, where there is an increase from 21 to 22, 71% to 74%. And then when you look across the chart, you'll see the difference between levels 3 and 4. And that's where we did see the changes across the various levels that contributed to that 74%. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, who's going to talk about secondary mathematics.
Absolutely. So we're going to look at grades 6, 7, and 8. And I think the general story for that is that each grade level really has a different result. So you'll notice in grade 6 that there is a small dip between 21 and 22 in the levels 3, 4. You'll notice that there's an increase in grade 7 in that same level. And then you'll notice a real consistency between 21 and 22 when we get to grade 8. But if we look at this grade 6 score, you'll notice that level 1 is really comparable to 2018 and 2021 percentages. But then if you do see that dip from 60% to 57% in the level 3, 4, you will notice on the right, when you look at the breakdown of 3, 4s, our level 4 students did increase from 28% to 34%. But you will see that 32% rise, or that 32% in 2022 for level 2, that's really accounting for some of those students that were in level 3, 4 before. You know, I think it's also important as we're looking at these numbers to think about what a percent means in context of students, right? So 1% really represents about 3 to 4 students. So I think that's important to note because we're talking about changes in percentages that are so small. We as a team recognize that there are students and they count as well. So we really do dig into those individual students even with some of the small changes. The other thing I want, before we go into grade 7, because you'll notice that this is the slide that really is one of our major focus areas, is grade 6. When you look at the other slides, you'll see why. But I do want to just give a little context to what we've done even prior to these scores coming out, because we recognize that this is an area of need. So one of them is the elementary resource, right? That 3-5, that Think Mathematics. Having a consistent resource across all schools is a major area. Other work that happened over the summer is our teachers actually got together in the middle school and we really did remap the standards for our grade 6, 7th, and 8th through all of our pathways, because that work had not been done. We also did a real curriculum upgrade for our grade 6. We did that to ensure that all of the standards were being taught in the curriculum. Prior versions might have been missing a standard or two. We were able to fill those gaps in. We also really made intentional decisions about 6 Accelerated and what 7th grade standards made the most sense mathematically to tie into the existing grade 6 standards. So it didn't seem like a monumental hill for those students. So you're gonna hear more later in the presentation about other next steps, but I think just looking at these numbers, we just had to address it in real time. So if we do go on to the next slide, you'll notice that in grade 7, right, there was an increase in that level 3, 4. We went from a 66% to a 72%. And then if you look again at the table on the right, that increase was mainly due to having a higher percentage of students in the level 4 category, from 33% to 39%. And then you'll recognize we had a small dip in level 1, and then our level 2 again had a small dip, but that rise in level 3, 4. And then in grade 8, is really a story of consistency from 21 to 22. So you'll recognize level 3, 4s remained about the same thing for level 2 and level 1. And at this point, I'm gonna pass it over to Corey, who will take a look at some of our district comparisons.
Okay. So Linda and Jeff just went through our results for the last 5 years in Ridgefield, really a comparison to ourselves and how our different cohorts did each year. Now we're going to look at how we compare to the state and then how we compare to our district reference group. So for each set of data that we present, we'll do the same thing, show you how it compares to the state and how it compares to the district reference group, also known as DIRG A. So when you look at how our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders performed on math in comparison to the state of Connecticut, you can see that we well exceeded the state average. When you look across grade levels 3, 4, and 5, you can see that Ridgefield is in the middle in 3rd grade, a little bit higher in 4th, and a little bit lower in 5th grade. When we continue to look at these slides across the reference groups, you will see that they also change order depending on what we're measuring, though it is noted that New Canaan is in the top spot quite a few times. So then looking at our middle school data, our comparison, again, when comparing to the state of Connecticut, we continue to perform above the state average. Then looking at grade 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math performance. 6th grade, as Jeff discussed, that's a growth area for us, a focus area, was before, continues to be. And then you can see in 7th grade, we did a little bit better than we did in 6th, and then really a little bit better in 8th in terms of our district reference group. We're going to move on to talk about the science assessment, the NGSS science assessment that we give in grades 5, 8, and 11. And Linda's going to lead us off.
Thanks, Corey. So in Ridgefield, as you may know, our curriculum is aligned to the next generation science standards, which is often referred to as NGSS. And the summative assessment measures the performance expectations in grades 5, 8, and 11. And these performance expectations are centered around the 3 dimensions of NGSS: science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. And the performance expectations are concentrated in 3 science domains. So we have earth and space science, physical science, and life science. So when you look at the results, the scores represent how students are responding to instruction around those 3 dimensions, right? The cross-cutting concepts, disciplinary core ideas, and the science and engineering practices across those 3 different science domains. So here we have 5th grade, and it's important to note that the first year that this assessment was given was in 2019. So that's why you see 3 years of data in comparison to 4 with the elementary mathematics, secondary math. And of course, we know we didn't give the summative assessments in 2020. And you can see the growth, right? 78% in 2021 to 82% this past spring. And then we did the same breakdown in terms of different levels, and you can see the difference with level 3 and level 4.
Yeah, and again, the next time the NGSS assessment's given is grade 8, so that's at the end of the middle school experience. And you'll look at the chart here, you'll notice that from 21 to 22, that level 3, 4 really did remain fairly consistent, with a small tick down in the level 3, 4, and as well as the level 2. And you will notice that small uptick then in the level 1 category as well. Then if we go to the 11th grade, you'll notice that here, while the level 4 remained consistent from 21 to 22, you can see that in the table on the right. You'll notice that our level 3 percentage did dip, and you'll notice where we saw that uptick was actually in our level 1. So that was an uptick in comparison to, if you look at the 2019 and the 2021 scores, that also were fairly consistent.
So again, when you look at our district comparison, it's like, what? Thank you. When you look at our district comparison in 5th grade, we're right in the middle. In 8th grade, we're lower down, and then moving up a little bit in 11th grade. But again, this was the 3rd time taking this assessment with a year off in between. Next, we're going to move on to the ELA scores.
Okay,
Linda's going to lead us off with 3rd grade ELA.
All All right, so I'll start us off with, again, comparison data for the elementary, 3, 4, and 5. Again, what you should expect here is very similar to what you saw in elementary mathematics. There is a decrease in grade 3 in comparison to the previous year, and then you're going to see an increase in grades 4 and 5. So here we have third grade, ESPA ELA, and there are 79% reaching level 3, 4, and then the breakdown on the table to the right, where we see shifts between the different levels.
And Linda and I were just talking today, this grade level of students, they went home during first grade. So just to give you some context of when they experienced COVID.
So if we go back to our previous conversation around early literacy and the importance of that structured learning, that was real tough to do, via remote. Made the best of it. So here we are for fourth grade, and that's where you do see an increase at 85%. And just want to draw your attention to level 4. We have 59% that moved up to our level 4. And then in fifth grade, again, an increase, and actually a fairly nice increase there. And then you see the difference in between the levels 3 and 4. And now I'll turn it over to Annie, who's going to talk about secondary.
Thank you. So I will share with you about our 6-8 student mastery on ESPA related to literacy. So similarly to Jeff and Linda, I'm going to share an overview of trend scores and our breakdown of levels 1 through 4. I just wanted to add in, that how much we study this information. So we study these scores in order to be responsive in our curriculums and our instruction. And while there's also, while we're also studying these numbers at the student level in order to better understand the individual student needs at all levels. So for sixth grade, you'll notice here that the 2022 scores are similar to last year's scores, with 71% of our students meeting or exceeding goal, with some minor shifts in the levels 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. For seventh grade, you'll see an increase in student mastery with 80% of our students meeting or exceeding goal as compared to last year's score at 73%. The breakdown shows that our students scoring 3s and 4s increasing, and our students scoring a level 1 or 2 have decreased. And then for grade 8, the data for our grade 8 students show a decrease from 75% to 72%, with 1 to 2% shifts at our level 1s and 2s. So I want to remind us that when we view these scores in context that Jeff had shared with us, that when our percentages shift, that's about 3 to 4 students. So here, for example, 75% down to 72%, we're looking at about 9 to 12 students. And I just wanted to share with you about that commitment to the individual students and studying that so that we can be responsive to their needs. And so when we study that, we are doing that through our MTSS process with structures that we have in place and also our curriculum revisions as we make decisions about changes based on what it tells us.
So again, looking at our comparisons, when compared to the state, we're well above the state average. And then when we're looking at our elementary ELA scores, you see that we fall in the middle of the pack and then right at the top in grade 5. In middle school, we continue to be well above the state average. 6th grade, we're a little closer to the bottom. 7th grade, we move up. And then 8th grade, we're back at the bottom in terms of our reference group. Now we're going to talk about SAT school day. Annie's going to lead us off.
Thank you, Linda. As we shift gears, I just want to help our mindsets about how we interpret these scores, because how ESPA and NGSS are assessments of mastery. The SAT is a predictive score. It's not necessarily mastery of those standards necessarily, but it's predictive of the student's ability to earn a C or better in a freshman level college course. So it does just change the way that we do view these a little bit. So the benchmark for ELA is 480 to have a 75% chance of getting a C or better as a freshman in college in your English course. So our students are scoring at an average score of 593. And it has been consistent pre-pandemic, and I'm going to go for it, say getting closer to post-pandemic. And so when we look at our grade 11 scores, 88.7%, I wanted to go 89, but numbers don't lie. I had to do it with 88.7. Our students are scoring at levels 3s and 4s on the SAT, at least scoring a 480 or above.
And then in math, we did a similar analysis, right? We looked at the trend for our average score. So you will see from last year to this year, there was an increase in the average SAT math score from 569 to 580. It doesn't quite see the 2018, 2019 levels, but it is in the right trajectory. And then when we go to the next slide and look at the breakdown of levels 3 and 4, I think it's important to Annie's point that it's a predictive score and it's a 75% chance or better of earning a C in a freshman level course. So while ELA has a benchmark score of 480, the math benchmark score is a 530. So when we're looking at levels 3s and 4s, it's off of a different number, but you'll notice here that our numbers from 21 to 22 really were very consistent. But again, not reaching those levels that were there in 2018, 2019.
So again, looking at our average in comparison to the DERG, and then the percent of students receiving levels 3 and 4. So we're at 590 and the top was 608, and then we were at 88.3% and Weston had 92.3. And then for math, we were right there at 580 in comparison to 618 from Westport. And then we were at 64.9% making benchmark as compared to Darien's 81.3%. So that was a lot of data, but we were trying to not go too slowly. So now we want to talk to you about some of the next steps and conclusions. I hope that it is obvious to you that this team and our teachers and our teacher leaders and our administrators have been working not just in response to this data, but in response to all student data in anticipation of this fall, last year, last spring, and in response to this data. Just as Jeff mentioned, seeing those math scores in 6th grade, we already knew that was a focus area. Now we have a lot more work to do to figure out exactly what that means and to be responsive to those students. So first of all, just to recap some of the ways that we've prepared in the spring and in the summer prior to getting these scores. We don't get the scores from these assessments until late June, early July. So in math, you've heard a lot about that new curriculum resource in grades 3 through 5. Next year, we're going to be implementing in K1 and 2, so then we'll be fully implemented in our elementary schools. We also worked and were able to have a district math coach as part of the budgeting process last year. And there was comprehensive professional development planned for mathematics with our math specialists and our math leaders. There was the remapping of curricular standards, which Jeff talked about in mathematics, specifically rewriting that Math 6 and Math 6A Accelerated. We have done a lot of work on MTSS. In the spring, we had K-8 committees, actually K-12 committees that worked on recalibrating, creating SMART goal resources for teachers, developing a plan to formalize the instruction and identification for students in algebra and geometry at the high school level. So it's not just the elementary level where we're continuing to work and continuing to service students who need a little extra support. In ELA, we did a deep dive, 612, into the study of student data to be responsive with our curriculum revisions. And it was really in this work, and this was Annie and her team this spring, where they realized that we needed to have even more emphasis on nonfiction reading and nonfiction reading strategies. Our social studies teachers, as Annie can say, also teach into that, but that was something that when we looked at the percentage of emphasis in the curriculum, especially in middle school, we realized that we needed to put a little more emphasis on that to really provide students with more practice and more specific direct strategy instruction around that nonfiction reading. And we also want to note that around NGSS, because remember that the high school 11th grade scores reflects students' coursework all the way through high school. So Jeff and his team did curriculum work this summer, and they made revisions to units, essential lessons, way to integrate reading and writing. and you rewrote biology, chemistry, and physics curriculum and did some remapping there. So that was already prior to getting these scores. What we are doing now. So one of the things that we're working on this week into next week is rolling out the tutoring support for students who received 1s and 2s assessments in math and literacy. So as you remember last year, using our ESSER funds, we created a tutoring program across the year. We're starting the year with a targeted program for those students, and then we'll expand moving forward, responding to student need. Specifically now, continuing to work on MTSS. Our principals are calling it an MTSS reboot, which we launched with all our teachers this fall, and we have common entrance and exit criteria, K9, because that's including the, K10, because that's including the algebra lab and the geometry lab. So it's not just work that happened in the elementary and middle school, but all the way up to the high school. And of course, we have to mention the ELA work that's happening in primary, in K2, actually pre-K2, with our new resources and the work that all our teachers are doing in the professional learning that they are engaged in this fall with the implementation of those new resources. So I could go on, but that is a list of what we're doing now to be responsive to that data. So just preparing for the future. How are we preparing for the future? Continuing to calibrate, continuing to study, continuing to imagine and to innovate ways that we can work with our students. And recognizing that there are times like this when we get big data sets, when they show us patterns that we didn't always expect, and then trying to be responsive and collaborative in how we approach that. So, thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you. Who wants to start us off with questions? Rachel?
Thank you so much. I'm gonna reiterate, I think, a lot of the steps that you already said that you have taken, but I had them written down as recommendations for this evening, and I want you to know that I'm taking this very seriously as a board member, and I want the community to know that as well. Math is definitely a passion of mine. That's my subject area. So of course, when I saw the middle school scores, I was very concerned. So one of my thoughts is, how could I, as a board member, help you guys in reviewing these scores and help students with their growth? And, use the analogy of an onion. I think there's lots of layers here that we have to pull back. I don't think it's one specific thing that's gonna say, okay, this is gonna fix it. And I hear a lot of the work that you guys have already done this summer, and I appreciate that. So I wanna just start there before I launch into my notes I have written down. So my first recommendation was that we need to listen and learn from our teachers. I want to hear from our 5th grade teachers how the curriculum in 4th grade is supporting the learning needed in 5th grade. I want to listen to middle school math teachers and how students are arriving in their classrooms ready to receive the curriculum. Also, I'm curious about tracking at the high school, if they've seen a decrease in students in advanced classes or the prep that they receive for those classes. My goal in asking for that is to help inform us in budget season to whether or not we need more math specialists, paras, tutoring services, professional development for our teachers. I did hear you guys talk about pathway work that was done over the summer, and I think that could go hand in hand in what I'm asking here, because teachers did get together, but it is a recommendation. My second recommendation in looking at the actual tests, and I don't know if the State Department has this, and I'm not asking this administration team to do this, it's more if the state can provide it, but if the math score can be broken down into the 3 categories, so it's concepts and procedures, problem solving, modeling, and data analysis, and then communication and reasoning. And if the state can provide us the breakdown, then perhaps that can inform our teachers of where maybe they can concentrate going forward. My third is that I don't want all the emphasis on the state testing. I think we can definitely use it to see trends, positive and negative. We're definitely seeing a negative one here, but over time, before COVID even.
I'm curious if the student scores translate to class assessment scores, tests, quizzes, projects, math portfolios. Because we know, as good teaching, that it's not in a box, right? It's not just one test score. So we could see a child in different lights. My fourth is tracking. So we do have a lot of tracking here in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I was wondering about the history behind that. I know that you guys did speak about the standards in the advanced placement classes, that you looked at that for the 6th grade level, and I was just wondering, it could be just something to look at in the other districts that did better than us. Do they have so many math classes, or is it just one inclusive math class? Just something to look at. So those are my recommendations for possible future conversations, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for all that. I will start by saying, I know that the kids have had a really rough few years, so I appreciate all the data. I do also understand, and I've always said this, I don't think each child can be fit into a box, as you said. But I agree with Rachel. I think we need to understand where this comes from and why this translates the way it does. I know that you've addressed the moving when the kids move from 5th grade to the 6th grade, and you're addressing that. That's great. But I also want to highlight that in what happens at high school, right? How many kids start up at the high level and how many kids drop off? And anecdotal or not, I do see that the kids start struggling, and I think it's great that you do address the kids K to 10. But I do think when the kids go into 10, 11, and 12, that's when there's a struggle too, because they have all these expectations on themselves, and they're all trying to do better and better. They're trying to take all these AP courses or not. And I think in all these conversations, and I just always keep saying that, we forget that some of these kids all ended middle school with some content lack, and they're doing all AP pre-calc or whatever it is. So I think it would benefit the board, it will benefit when we go forward with our budget decisions, just as Rachel said, having math coaches support whatever you need from us to support all our kids, if you could have that kind of data. I mean, I don't want to add a lot, but I'm sure this is something you can all pull. And of course, the conversation always will come back, why one district is doing so much better. So if we can figure that out, and I will again echo Rachel's point, tracking children, does that help us? Does that not help us? Is it differentiation? Is it not? I mean, just to understand why our kids struggle. And I think you saw that in the data. They do well in the middle levels, for lack of a better word. Grade 4 is doing better as grade 7, but they somehow struggle at grade 3 and then grade 6 and grade 8.
Yeah,
Something
transitions
happens.
too.
Transitions.
That
and
is part
that's-
of our district priorities also
and
this
so
year,
why
transition
they're
grades,
doing
yep.
that,
Yep.
yes. So just all these ways, and I go back to, as a board and as a parent who has children, how can we support you? How can we bring this conversation when it comes to budget time, right? This is where we talk about, and people don't understand. They talk about data and they talk about scores, but they don't understand we need teachers, we need support services, and the way we can help may be by budget.
There's a bit of a mixed bag in the results, right? I just want to point out that there are some not pretty things and there's some good things. Students in the level 1 of not meeting their levels hasn't grown. I mean, NGSS is a little different, but setting that aside, level 1 has stayed pretty flat, and level 4 in a lot of places has grown. So it looks like we've seen a lot of people approaching, but not quite getting there. Did fewer students show growth, or did students show less growth? Did fewer of our students show growth in their scores, or did students in general show less growth?
We can access that information as well, and Jonathan, I don't think the team is prepared to do that at this moment, but we can actually disaggregate the data by student growth to see what that growth cohort is like. So are you seeing 3s go to 2, or are you seeing more 2s go to 3, even though we may see some more kids in 1? Are we seeing individual student growth, even though because the standard is changing each year, you may actually see that students are shifting
Right?
up, but because that standard has shifted, that's moved as well. But we have the ability to show the growth scores, so we can do that. I think there's a lot of other good questions that both Rachel and Tina raised that I think are worth us coming back with. I just have to think about, there's a lot of them and how we might organize that. But around mathematics and showing the work that has been done and the work that still needs to be done. The other, I'm sorry, Jen, you
No,
might
no.
have another question. The other piece that I think is, it's important to keep in mind, and there's obviously cohort data and things like that, but at the end of the day, we have a population of students that we serve. And we serve for them to meet, grade level expectations. After 1 year, we expect 1 year of growth. And we've talked about that a lot. That said, I think we also have to understand that there really was not leadership in this content area until Jeff came on board. Really, we had Allison Villanueva here, Dr. Villanueva, who led humanities, but we had a lot of different folks serving a lot of different content areas. And to have Linda Johnson now at the elementary level and having Jeff at the secondary level, not just in mathematics, but in science, is a benefit that we currently have that we're not necessarily going to see right away. Because as you know, that work takes time, just like it did to develop and study a math program. We just didn't pick one. It took actually 1.5 years, if not more than that. So I hope that we have, and again, our kids only have a year, so we don't have the gift of time. They don't have the gift of time. We have 1 year. And that 1 year with them matters. But I do think that the leverage that we currently have in terms of the support and the very specificity of talent around a content area can't be overlooked. We just didn't have it before.
And I think, to put a positive note on it, thinking about the big picture and what we've all been through in the last 2 years, overall the loss is not as much as I had expected. And to see us back on the board and to see our teachers engaged and back in as much as they are, it really is a testament to how much they care and how much their work around curriculum is supported, how they have resources to lean on, the structures with MTSS. I can't stress to you how important that is, that students are getting identified at the same place, regardless of the school, getting the same kind of high quality, scientifically research-based responses to their specific needs, moving students up and down depending on their growth in their specific goals. That work that we're doing collaboratively as a district really is making an impact. So overall, as much as we always want to do better, and we will, and we are here for all students, I think if we take a step back and think about what we've been through, and those 3rd through 8th graders last year, half of them took the assessment remotely from their kitchen with their parents last year. So last spring, they were really sitting back at their desks again. So I do want to make sure that there is some positivity and just where we are overall. And I know I'm not saying that, I just want to make sure our teachers hear that, and that our teachers know that with these supports, like Dr. De Silva said, we feel confident that we're able to do that work and figure out the tricky parts. Because we had other assessments for that 6th grade group that wasn't looking like what we expected, what we actually saw on the Smarter Balance assessment. So there are places where data doesn't exactly fit. So there has to be a reason why, and that's why the team is doing the work, and actually we like to do that kind of work.
Amy?
I'm just wondering, I know I can sort of flip through the different pages, but I'm just wondering, do you guys look at the cohorts over time as
Yes.
well? And because Linda, you were talking earlier, and I'm just thinking about my own, my girls. I'm just thinking about my own girls learning how to read and write through COVID and all this. It's not just they had to do it remotely. Even when they got back, everybody had a mask on, and I remember the kindergarten teachers talking about how challenging that was. And of course, they're superstars and the teachers were fantastic, but it's still very different, and they were all still learning. And I'm just wondering, when we're looking at 4th grade or 5th grade or 6th, 7th, are we seeing that actually a couple of years ago, their percentages were much lower, and while compared to other 6th grades,
over time, they might be lower, but if you look at their performance over the last few years, they're actually growing and they're improving. And are we able to identify, because of COVID and the things that have happened, like, oh, you know what, that third grade really critical area, they kind of missed out. And this particular cohort really needs us to make up the differences in whatever particular sections.
So really appreciate your thoughts and your comments, and we do. We look at cohort data as well as year to year, different groups of students. There's work that's done at the district level, and there's some really good work that's done at our building level. I'll speak on behalf of our building administrator teams and the instructional leadership teams and how they look very closely at cohort data, right? Because I'll speak elementary. They have that group of students for 3 years, taking that assessment, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and many of them have been in that school since kindergarten. So that level of detail, specificity, individual student growth or lack thereof, a lot of that really good work does take place at the building level. Not saying that we don't do that and we can't do that, but understand that's part of our MTSS process, where we look at every student in the building, not students who reach to 3, a 2, or a 1, and we look at multiple data points, not only ESPA, someone mentioned our curriculum-based assessments. So with that triangulation of data, we look at each individual student, who's here, and here. And that's where our teams start to develop plans. And that's where differentiation is a really important piece of our work. Which students might need a little bit more? How do we need to extend or enrich the curriculum? Which students are doing just fine? So we're going to nudge them along even more because they deserve just as much as a student who might be struggling and not meeting that grade level expectation. And yeah, for sure, we see differences from year to year, cohort to cohort of students. And that's the makeup of schools, right? We don't have the same group of children every year in 1st grade or 4th grade or 8th grade. And some groups of students might need a little bit more in this and a little less in that, and vice versa. So yes, we do that work at a district level, but I assure you, the level of detail that our building level teams do to look at each individual student is extraordinary. And it's not only ESPA. I'm just going to give that gentle reminder. It's really starting in preschool. Our primary grades, they may not be taking a state assessment. We have, whether it's our Ames Web Screener, our NWEA, our MAP scores, again, curriculum-based assessments to say how are our students performing on a daily basis.
Just to add to that, I think that piece of information that Corey just kind of touched upon, but that MTSS structure that the team has really worked hard on alongside our teachers and our administrators, but looking at those data sources. So in the fall, winter, spring, when we're looking at not just the students' SBA scores, but also what are their reading level, what are their unit assessments, what is their Ames Web or NWA scores, and are all those things lined up, and do they match? And there's entrance and exit criteria, as Corey mentioned, but are those things matching up, or are they all just kind of out of whack? What also can be represented here is just changes in staffing, right? You might have a new teacher to a grade level. You may have a teacher who is out due to whatever the medical reason was or personal reason was. Those aren't represented. Again, a child only has 1 year. And so what that means is that the work that we have to provide to our faculty, our schools, might look different depending upon those scenarios. But I think it's certainly something that we have to consider. You asked about the cohort data. They didn't break it down, and the team didn't break it down in that way, but very quickly you can look. Just for ELA, for example, 83 to 85, 81 to 87 in the next year, 83 to 71, some cases 71 to 80. So you can see that it's gone up most of the time but there could be reasons within that too that it might have shifted. Just as Jeff mentioned, it could be 2 or 3 kids. You can go into a school that may have students with some significant needs that may have not been there last year. And that, again, that population, that number is just 2 or 3 children. Again, our work doesn't change, and I think what Corey mentioned, and we've been talking a lot about, is the use of those ESSER funds, which we offered last year in a more of an open door policy. Kids could sign in and get extra help for homework, but being a little bit more targeted with the needs. And then again, just providing access points for kids. So if it has to be in the evening and teachers are willing to do it, then let's just do it virtually so we can get that session in, because we may not be able to get the faculty or the kid right after school because of whatever's happening, but being really targeted to fill in those gaps and looking at the individual kid, which we can do, and will do and have already done, I'm sure.
Just a quick point. I think you mentioned MTSs, and I really appreciate it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the new flex schedule at the high school also will help target kids, right? If the kids are struggling, and I think I do want to keep reiterating that to the parents.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because
That if your kid is struggling, the teachers
Absolutely.
will reach out, or they can reach out for help.
Yep, every morning they have that advisory first part of the week where they can sign up for certain sessions. So that's a huge capture time for kids and teachers who are all in the building.
I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that again, because I do think that's gonna hopefully make a lot of difference for kids who are struggling and kids who have been sick, because at the high school, if you miss one day, kids have a panic attack. So at least this is a way they can schedule without missing out on their classes. So I just wanted to make sure we say that again.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for bringing us up to speed on this.
Thank you. Karen, that's a sign. And he knows the time.
Oh, is it?
It's 9 o'clock.
Are we
He
running
knows.
late? I'm sorry about that.
He knows the time.
Okay, budget update. You want to start with the budget update, and then we'll take a motion after? Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Your budget status update is for the period ending September 30th, which marks the end of the first quarter of the 22-23 fiscal year. And we have either expended or obligated $94.8 million of our $106.6 million allocation, or roughly 89%. To date, school is moving ahead smoothly. We have no major concerns regarding budget at this time. We are continuing to keep a keen eye focused on the fluctuating rates in the market for electricity, oil, natural gas, and of course, we are continuing to monitor our special education, the volatility of that department. In our SPED program, we're continuing to finalize some of our outplacements. We're nearly complete with our current annual encumbrances there. The first submission to the state for excess cost reimbursement is due in December. However, the first of 2 installments is not received typically until the end of February. So we'll be able to update you on that time if we have forecast our revenue from excess cost with what degree of accuracy that will be. And then lastly, our transportation study that we talked about a couple of weeks ago is now in full swing. We recently partnered with Transportation Advisory Services, or TAS, to help us do this study. We are in the second week of a 2-week deep dive on attendance and ridership so that we can make some informed decisions moving forward. Our study outcomes are going to direct us to either, recommend an extension to you with first student, or to recommend going out to RFP. But we're very excited to provide an optimal transportation service to the community at the most efficient cost possible. And that is the update for September 30th. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
Questions on the budget update?
Even from Flint.
Have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the financial report ending September 30th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Sean? All in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And you want to take us through the transfer? Let's take the motion for the transfers.
I move that the Board of Education approve the budget transfers presented on October 11th, 2022.
Second? Gina?
Just about half a dozen, 6 or 7 transfers to review in facilities. They transferred $7,892 from Barlow Mountain to Branchville for concrete work that was done. The high school athletics department transferred from 3 different lines in the dance department to support new competitive uniforms for the team. Special education transferred $20,000 from a currently unfilled assistive technology technical coordinator position to a professional service line to cover the cost of some consulting work there for a student with an IEP. The tech department transferred $30,000 from computer services to educational technology subscription to cover the additional funding needed for an expanded service in the Learning A to Z program. Transportation moved $14,000 from our regular contract line to our management consultant line. That was to hire the group that I just talked about in the budget update to help us with that study. And in curriculum, we had 2 transfers this month, $4,500 from conference training to curriculum development to support NEASC work that is currently underway, and $1,750 from an initial purchase textbooks and resources line to digital materials and resources to renew a Soundtrap subscription. That is a software for music, right? We had that question this morning, so those were our transfers.
Thank you. Any questions on the transfers? All those in favor? Approved. Thank you. And now we can move on to the racial show. These are all second reads. Everybody have-
So many.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
let me just
Do you want to
go through it.
Go motions?
Sure. I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5123, promotion.
Is there a second? Tina? Any comments? All those in favor? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6111, school calendar.
And a second? Selena? Questions? Comments? All in favor? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6171, special education.
And a second? Sean? Comments? All in favor? Motion carries.
You got it?
Oh.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You got it? I move that the Board of Education delete policy 6171.1, children with special needs.
Second? Divya? All those in favor? Carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6171.2, preschool special education.
And a second? Selena? Any questions, comments? All in favor? Everybody but Amy.
I'm just gonna pull up the one that I do have the change on.
Motion carries.
Okay, sure.
All right.
That one's good. I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6172, alternative education programs.
Do we have a second? Selena. Any questions or comments? Not this one? All in favor? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6173, homebound hospital instruction.
Do I have a second? Selena, you were first. Do I have any questions or comments?
Go ahead. Sure.
Okay. So your use of the, or the use of the semicolon after complex, semicolons usually mean and, so to have and after the semicolon, just.
So,
But if we've been advised that we need the ands, I'm for it.
yes, so, I did review this. And grammar is not my first forte. So we put a comma after disability and it didn't work. The grammar checker caught it. It's not correct grammar. You could put a colon after complex, or you could put a comma after complex. And I spent some time on this, reviewing the definitions of semicolon and comma.
Okay.
Because I am a math person, so I needed to get this in my head. So, because the language, so this is my reasoning behind semicolon, but I don't think this should fail at this table, if we prefer comma. But because the language lends itself to two independent clauses, the first is considering the needs of a student with a disability who is medically complex, and the second is the need for instruction in accordance with an IEP when the student is not able to attend school. However, that reason also could be for disciplinary reasons. So I would agree with the semicolon.
So if you're gonna have the semicolon though, you gotta take out and.
Yeah, no.
You use semicolon in replace of and.
Semicolon, the need for instruction, right?
Yeah, or if.
I don't know if that is correct. I don't want it to fail just because of that. I you know.
There are a few occasions you can start a sentence with and, but they're very rare.
Yeah.
Cheryl? And I have Robin.
Robin?
Yeah,
What-
yeah.
So no and?
Phone a friend?
Are we able?
That's almost like a
Okay. So the PPT. Hold on.
I actually,
To just.
I think there's a.
Phone a friend. You have to move both.
I don't think, I think the purpose of the policy, if I may, I think the purpose of the policy doesn't change either way. The purpose of the policy is still about homebound hospital instruction. And so before going any further, I would move for the motion that's on the floor and approve policy. If everyone feels differently,
We could
then that's
edit it
fine.
later.
Yeah, for a comment
Yeah.
or, I mean,
Totally fine.
Yeah, we're not
right,
changing
it
the policy.
doesn't change the policy, it's the grammar. So if the board would be okay with that, would the
We just want to
board,
make sure that it reads the way,
right,
right,
correct,
that people can
correct,
understand
yes,
it.
correct.
Comma, semicolon, and whatever, I'm happy with it.
I think there's an and.
But is it, or do you need both conditions, or is it?
It could be medically,
Rachel, how, is this a state?
but,
I can't find it, mine's out.
but Rachel,
So-
we can.
We could do it
edit that
offline.
out, like, we can do
Okay.
that later. Okay, yeah, because I,
And approve it and.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy to approve, and we
The whole
can,
meeting into chaos over.
yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay, we should get it right.
Ken told me to.
Oh, to me.
I know it. All right,
All right,
motion is on the table, there is a second. All those in favor of approving the motion as written for now, please raise your hands. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah.
And sticking with Rachel for a little bit, correspondence to the board. Starting with public comment, do we have anyone here who would like to speak
anybody like
about
to make
grammar or
public
anything
comment?
else?
No? Okay. So correspondence, report, we have received 3 emails since our last Board of Education meeting. 1 email regarding Jane Doe No More, 1 email regarding an upcoming webinar on healthy school hours, and 1 email regarding the First View app. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And do we have a motion to adjourn? Selena so moves. Do I have a second? Sean. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
CBC is considering.
Good night.